thoughts about this book, obviously. Hello people of the world, my name is Missam and welcome to my channel. Here we talk about books, movies and TV shows and about writing, especially about fantasy and science fiction. So if you're into that kind of stuff, hit subscribe right now. Do it. Do it. So today we talk about A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is a huge title for a huge book. As usual, we're going to divide this review into a non-spoiler section, a spoiler section, and writing lessons that I've learned from the book, which is for authors and people who like to know about the technical stuff about books. All timestamps are listed in the description down below. I was a huge Hunger Games fan as a child, and did this book live up to the hype? Let's find out. So the book follows Coriolanus Snow, who was President Snow of the original Hunger Games trilogy. I wasn't sure how the story was gonna go. Are they gonna give him a sad backstory, start him off as a good guy and then eventually make him a bad guy because there's something bad happened to me and now I'm a bad guy? And I was expecting that, and I'm so glad that this book was not it. This book was actually pretty nuanced. I liked it. I liked most of the parts, but there were a few parts that made me bang my head against a wall, namely the songs. Now here's the thing, when you write song lyrics in a book, it's very awkward because you just look at the lyrics and you don't know what to do with them. They read more like a poem than a song, and it's weird because it's supposed to be a song, so you just imagine it in some obscure Taylor Swift tune and you try to match the beats. It doesn't happen. And you know the worst part? I listened to this book. While the voice actor was actually pretty good, the way the songs were said, nothing that the voice actor can do about it. There is no tune, so I don't blame the voice actor. It was good, but can you imagine how awkward it is just to hear a full-grown man narrate a song to you? And then you desperately try to tune it in some Taylor Swift song? Nah. Moving on to the story. So, the songs. There were too many of them. The book was long, and I think that was basically because of the songs. Just kidding. The book was actually pretty dense. Denser than the original trilogy. In a good way, in a bad way, we'll get to that a bit later, but there were definitely a lot of songs, and I just skipped right through some of them. Also guys, can you tell I've put winged eyeliner? I have no idea if they're symmetrical, but please compliment it. The book is organized in 3 parts. First is the pre-Hunger Games, Hunger Games, post-Hunger Games. First 2 parts flowed together pretty well. The third part felt like it was part of a different book, and it actually made me wonder if Suzanne Collins should have just split the book into 2 parts, but I don't know. I don't want to say it should have been like this because that is the author's decision, ultimately what they do, and you never know, maybe that would have been a worse decision, but it definitely did feel a bit abrupt. It was a big change. The Hunger Games were boring. Not the trilogy, but the Hunger Games in this book was boring. That is not a bad thing. Let me tell you why. We were basically the in-universe audience as we watched the Hunger Games. They were brutal and primitive and boring because they were supposed to be boring, because they're supposed to be in this very raw, unmanaged state. None of the trilogy glamour is there. Where is the trilogy on my bookshelf? It's somewhere. I felt kind of bored. In fact, as the Hunger Games were going, usually what happens, you want to know, you want to find out what happened to these kids, but in my head I was just counting down the tributes, which is sad. I'm a horrible person, but I realized this is exactly how the in-universe audience must be feeling, just counting it down, just waiting for it to be over. But the Hunger Games were boring, and that was not necessarily a bad thing. Speaking about the Hunger Games, there were way too many people and names involved. Okay, so we had Coriolanus, his friend Sir Janus, I don't know. Then there was Lucy Gray. Then there were 24 tributes along with their 24 mentors, and there's this part in the book where they just list it off. Then we have the villains and the good guys and the bad guys and the families and the extras. And boom! Lots of characters. I lost track after some time. I mean, during the Hunger Games, I really did not follow who was who. I think I remembered, apart from Lucy Gray, only 2 other names stuck with me. And those 2 people were the only people I ultimately ended up caring about. Not really caring about, but like, I wanted to see where it goes with them. Talking about Lucy Gray Baird. I did not like her character, and I can already hear hordes of you coming after me going like, Miss, how can you say that? Lucy Gray was probably one of the best things about the book. You're not allowed to say that. And yes, I am allowed to say that, and I'm going to talk more about it in the spoiler section. But for what it's worth, Lucy Gray, the reason why I don't like Lucy Gray is that she is such a not like other girls girl. I don't want to give too much away, but was it enough for me to stop reading the book? Again, no. There were parts about her character that annoyed me, but overall, she was an okay character. She served her purpose. She was fine. But yeah, she was just okay. I've heard a lot of people like just gushing about her, and I do not feel that gush coming from me. Let's talk a bit more about Coriolanus Snow. Coriolanus, I liked the fact that he was very nuanced. He was not a good guy, he was not a bad guy. And then when you see his slow descent into badness, it's good. It worked for me. I liked Coriolanus as a character. I was very apprehensive about the book. I had no idea how they're gonna do it. Are they gonna make the villain sympathetic? How are they gonna make him turn bad? Needless to say, I'm impressed by the way things have turned out. Sir Janus was a pretty annoying character. I know that he was a good character, he was a good guy, but he was annoying, and more on that in the spoiler section. Everybody else in the book served their purpose. There was this woman called Dr. Gall who reminded me of this lady. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Apart from that, there was some pretty great characters. There was the Dean, who I liked, especially what happened at the end. Highbottom. Was his name Highbottom? Yes, his name was Highbottom. And then there were a couple of other people like Coriolanus' family. I really liked them. I really liked their characterizations. I liked some of like his classmates. I don't remember a single name, I'm sorry. There's this girl called Clementia, I think. Clementia. Mostly all the characters served their purposes. It's just, it got a bit like difficult keeping track of all the characters and all the songs and like all these scenes. Blah. Was this book required? I don't think so. I don't think it definitely is a pretty great book for fans of the trilogy who want more lore, because it really dives deep into like the lore of the Hunger Games and like the history. I would have liked to know a lot more. I would really like to know about like the rebellion and more about what lies more about what lies in like outside of Panem, but I'm pretty satisfied with what I got. Looking at the Hunger Games in its primitive form was pretty exciting. How the tributes were treated, really well done. I won't say that this book is needed, but the best part about this book is that it definitely had something to add. So the Hunger Games is actually a very political book. It has a lot of commentary on social issues and a lot of that jazz. This book adds to it. This is not a mindless cash grab. That much I'm gonna tell you. This book adds to the conversation the Hunger Games started, and I think that while it's not needed, but it, like, now that it's out there, it's not completely useless, and I think that that's a pretty great compliment for these kind of books. Added to the conversation, it made me feel a lot of things. It's definitely a lot more philosophical than the 3 Hunger Games, which is why like somebody who's not a fan of the trilogy may not enjoy it, because you need to already be attached to the world in order to take these deep dive plunges into the philosophy and the politics of the situation. But if you are a fan of the Hunger Games, you're gonna like it. As literature, I think this book did pretty well. There were a few issues with it, but overall, I liked it. I may not have enjoyed it if I did not like the original trilogy, but since I did, I enjoyed it. That being said, the ending, I need to mention the ending. I'm not gonna like spoiler free. The ending was amazing. Like the climax of Act 3 was so good. More on that in the writing lessons portion, and also a bit on that in the spoiler section, but it was so well done. I loved it. The final ending, like the falling action from the climax, like the falling action, that was a bit too abrupt and the action fell a bit too fast. It was a bit anticlimactic, like the way things got resolved, anticlimactic as but other than that, that climax was one of the best I've read in a while. That's it for the non-spoiler section. Now let us dive into the spoiler section. Let's first talk about Lucy Greybeard. Let me present Lucy Gray in a nutshell. First of all, her name is Lucy Greybeard. Secondly, she wears rainbow-colored ruffles. She sings, which is fine. I'm not criticizing her as a person. She's presented as this really cute girl, but she's edgy as she drops snakes down people's clothes, and she is like the template of I am not like other girls because I wear my rainbow ruffles and I've got colorful makeup and I'm not district, I'm not capital, I'm from the Covey and I've got snakes. Kid you not, there's this line in the book where she is describing a song which she really likes. She calls it her song and she goes like, "It's a mystery, sweetheart. It's like me. That's why it's my song." And if that is not a stereotypical, not like other girls, edgy girl, I don't know what is. Also, these kids are what, 16, 17? You know, the funny thing about these kinds of books is that while they serve as a really fun, like, fantasy for young, like, kids who are like 14, 15, 16, 17, when you're reading it as an adult and when you're reading about people like Lucy Greybeard, see, the thing about Coriolanus Snow is while he too was very mature for his age, he still felt like a teenager, because there are teenagers who are geniuses and who are that arrogant and that entitled, and that is fine. But I don't know if there are people like Lucy Greybeard. I mean, when I was 16 or 17 or however old she is, I was more like this. Now I understand that different experiences make different people behave differently. My experience was basically this very room, this very chair, and all these books and some cake. But just because that was the definition of my childhood doesn't mean that that's the definition of everybody's childhood, especially somebody growing up in like District 12 or somebody who's had a life like Lucy Gray. But I still think that she was edgy for... Do I have cake on my teeth? No. She was edgy for the sake of being edgy, I mean. But it's okay, as I said, her character serves her purpose pretty well, and I like her character. That just like these things about her character just annoyed me, and I just eye rolled. That was the most, God, I won't say that I hated her, but she was eye roll worthy, especially in these places where she goes like, "I'm a mystery." Coriolanus was great. His relationship with Tigris was one of my favorite parts of the book. The best part about Coriolanus is that he never came across as a sympathetic protagonist who you are gonna like love. No, whatever he said, it always had very unsettling undertones. I mean, no matter what he said, you could see a lot of rage and anger and prejudice simmering below the surface. And you knew that this guy is crooked, even though he feels like he's not, and he feels like he's in the right. Like the way his affections for Lucy Gray develop, the way he calls her his girl and he's so possessive about her, and there are multiple places where he goes like, "She belongs to me." I hate that sentence. I like the phrase "you belong with me," but every time somebody says "you belong to me," I'm just like, FBI, open up! Sir Janus was a pain in the ass. I know that he was supposed to be this moral compass, amazing cinnamon roll of a character, which he was. Again, all these characters, they're for a reason, and they're impactful. But why I hated Sir Janus, and I swear I hated him after a point, because this guy was dumb as f***. Okay, He wanted to be a rebel. He had this moral compass which was telling him to do things a certain way. That's great, man. I love you for doing that. Thank you for being who you are. But this guy kept dragging Coriolanus into his shit. And like, okay, the first time in the arena, I get it. Serjanus had no idea. But then the second time he tells Coriolanus about his rebel plans. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you drag your best friend into this? If you're supposed to be a good guy, why would you drag your friend into this? And the answer is simple. He was a good guy, but he was a dumb. And that frustrated me so much because I knew that I really wanted to love his character. I love such, conflicted characters. I didn't like him because he was dumb. Again, I did not like him as a character, as a written character. He was written pretty well, but I did not like him as a person, which is not a bad thing. If I have such strong feelings about a character, that's a character done right. I'm gonna follow this trend of like giving villains a backstory. Shouldn't Dr. Gall get a backstory? Why was she so crooked? I mean, I'm definitely interested. I mean, if you're giving villains backstories, give this villain a backstory too, bitches. Okay. Here's where I'm gonna gush a little bit. There were some scenes that stood out, and how? There were some scenes that were so beautiful and so impactful. Impactful isn't the right word. Like I felt those scenes in my bones, which just speaks so much about Suzanne Collins' writing style. More on that in the writing lesson section, but there are a couple of scenes which I have to mention. Okay, when Clemencia, whatever her name is, when she was bitten by the snake, the tension in that scene, holy crap, I loved it. You know how I said that they're out of like around or over half a dozen songs, there were 2 or 3 that really made sense. Hanging Tree was one of those songs. It should have been there. I'm so glad that it was there. I loved the fact that it was there. I loved knowing about how it was started. Actual incident which inspired the song was so haunting. Both the hangings in this book, one of Sir James's, one of that other dude, so haunting. The way the Jabberjays picked up the last words. Oh my god, that when I imagined it, that was fantastic. I know that I'm sounding very snarky and edgy and not like other reviewers when I'm talking about this book, mostly because I'm not in the right state of mind. I stayed up till 6 a.m. reading the book. I don't really use a script. I just write down notes and then I say whatever the hell I want, which is why I'm always so scatterbrained. But some scenes really, really made an impact. There's this one place where when the snakes are left in the arena, she describes the tank as the way the tank opened like a flower, the petals of a flower, and the snakes come out like a multicolored sunburst. Suzanne Collins! Everything that went down in the climax, that setting, the Jabberjays, no, the Mockingjays were right there, right? The way the Hanging Tree was echoing, and the way he's hunting Lucy Gray down. Oh my god, that scene gave me chills. Which is why the anticlimactic way in which everything is just settled, poof, and it's all good, and suddenly he is gonna turn into evil President Snow. I was disappointed with that sudden downfall because it was such a beautiful climax. Why would you ruin that with such a fast-paced ending? The fallen action was they built up so gradually to the climax, and the following action went boop. You've written over 500 pages, 10 more pages aren't gonna make that big of a difference. I know that I've dissed a lot on Lucy Gray, but I liked her. I like that they Coriolanus and Lucy Gray, they find some common ground, such as talking about their mother. I felt bad for her when she developed these strong feelings for Coriolanus. I know that she has her problems, but overall, I wouldn't say that I cared deeply for her, but I was interested to know what happens to her. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Hunger Games. Kids came up with the idea. All the add-ons, making Hunger Games what it was Coriolanus' idea when he was 17. Kids came up with it. and the government implemented it. I just find it kind of unrealistic. That being said, I loved the differences between the Hunger Games now and the Hunger Games before. Both of these eras, they show a very different side of humanity. The first one is the crazy level of prejudice, the dehumanization. I mean, both of them dehumanize the tributes in two ways. One is when they actually treat them like animals, and the other is when they treat them like racehorses. The tributes are kept in monkey houses, and it's so... They had to compete for attention, and the way they were competing for attention, it made my skin crawl. Arachne's death scene, the way she was treating her tribute, like she was taking the sandwich away from her, and then they were treated by vets, and the vet kept telling the government that some of these kids need actual, like, they need to be hospitalized, but they weren't being hospitalized. These scenes were hard-hitting, they were brutal, and which is why, like, I can have all my fun and I can, like, diss on certain aspects of the book, but I have to commend Suzanne Collins because it takes courage, insane amount of empathy to write what she has written. She literally held up a mirror and she showed us the worst in humanity. You know in your heart that no matter how stupid and juvenile the Hunger Games may be, the essence of the Hunger Games, it's possible because it happens in our world now, it has happened in our world before, and it's gonna keep happening in our world long after we are gone. To the writer section. Okay, first I need to be like a bit more cheerful because I got pretty emotional in the last bit. Coming to the writer. Okay, that was a bit too enthusiastic. Coming to the writer, writing lessons portion. Suzanne Collins' her writing style is probably one of my favorites. She says a lot in very few words. Like, this is the first thing that I realized reading her book right now. She says so much in so little words, and that is a skill that I've been trying to develop. I know that a lot of you have been trying to develop too. I've got some examples which I'm going to read out right now. I need to search for those examples first. There's this part in which Coriolanus had to... Spoilers ahead, there is, like, you know, after a few years, 10 years after the war, waste was creeping back into fashion. So during those wartime years, people ate anything and everything. So trash was very uncommon, and now she says waste was creeping back into fashion. I really don't know how to explain what I felt while reading these lines, but that's why I thought I'm just gonna read them out because maybe then you will understand what I'm trying to say. Like, with certain lines, she implies a lot of things. So this book is a bit of a masterclass in subtext. Even certain dialogues, they say one thing, but you know what the other thing that it's trying to say. Every dialogue, every description is very carefully there. Like, everything has a purpose, which is why, like, apart from the songs, even the songs had a purpose. It was overdone, but everything was there for a reason. It was there to make a statement, and that is brilliant. My favorite was the description of Capital News and the way they promoted themselves. If you didn't see it here, it did not happen, which is I'm just gonna leave it there. The way Suzanne Collins makes social and political statements, if you are looking to write a book of this sort, like to be this impactful, to be so packed with social messages, you need to read it, because I've seen something like this done very little, especially nowadays. It's a good book for raw emotions and raw descriptions, like the way she sets scenes, setting the scene and describing stuff like around, like the climax, it is beautifully set up. The scene is so eerie and the tension is so high. So if you want to learn how to do that, this is a great book to pick up and to read through. That's all I have for you today. I'm going to stop rambling right now. All in all, I enjoyed the book. I wish it was a bit shorter in terms of the songs. I wish Lucy Gray wasn't so bleh. And I wish Sir Janus just had some brains. But apart from these things, nothing in the book really bothered me so much. Yes, the third part was a bit off. But yeah, Am I gonna recommend this book to you? Hell yeah. If you like this video, comment, let me know how you felt about this Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because I really want to talk to people about it. And if you liked my video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not like it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know either way, whether you liked it, whether you did not like it, what you agreed with, what you didn't agree with, and of course, please subscribe. Thank you and bye.